The Cabinet Council has been convened by President Andrzej Duda for the 13th of February at 1 p.m. This means holding a session of the Council of Ministers chaired by the Polish president. The head of state wants to learn about the government's plans for Poland's key investments, including the central transport port, the nuclear power plant, and the expansion of ports in Świnoujście and Gdańsk. In the case of the budget adopted by Tusk's cabinet and signed by the president, according to the head of state, there were legal doubts related to the correctness of the procedure for passing the law. The issue was the impossibility of participation in the work of the Sejm by MPs Mariusz Kamiński and Maciej Wąsik. Therefore, Andrzej Duda decided to refer the law to the Constitutional Court for follow-up control. And this action was met with harsh criticism from the current government. President Andrzej Duda confirms.
Ustawa budżetowa w niedługim czasie wejdzie w życie.
The budget law will soon enter force. I want to express satisfaction that the government will be able to implement those commitments it has made.
Będzie mógł realizować te zobowiązania, które podjął.
Despite the threats, the money will go to Poles as prepared by the government of Donald Tusk. There are no major problems. We have a budget. The state will function normally. But the Prime Minister is not giving up his attacks on the President. On the one hand, he admits that there are no problems in connection with the budget for the state, while on the other, he warns of unspecified consequences that he believes could result from the President's referral of the budget to the Constitutional Court. The President of Poland, in the interest of his two convicted former or current colleagues, is ready to jeopardize the interests of the state, the interests of the people. The President has to uphold the Constitution, and this Constitution is, according to many constitutionalists, being violated by the Tusk government. The Constitution is clear. Polish Sejm consists of 460 deputies. However, Tusk and the Marshal of the Sejm, Szymon Hołownia, do not recognize Mariusz Kamiński and Maciej Wąsik as members.
Skoro nie mogą, bo są jakieś...
Since they can't, because there are some obstacles put up by the body of the Sejm, well then, there is the question of what principle this Sejm operates on. So here the President's decision indicates a systemic problem, a constitutional problem, which should not have existed at all.
Problem ustrojowy, problem konstytucyjny.
But it did arise because Speaker Hołownia, instead of making decisions based on the binding ruling of the Supreme Court's extraordinary control chamber, only recognizes the unlawful ruling of the Labour control chamber, which had, according to the law on the Supreme Court, no competence to deal with this matter.
Należy przyjąć to do wiadomości i wykonać, bo rozstrzygnięcie sądowe jest ostatecznym zamknięciem sprawy, co sugeruje zachowanie Państwowej Komisji Wyborczej jako dodatkowy argument.
However, the State Election Commission apparently recognizes, and this is my supposition, that the case is closed because it has not undertaken the procedure for entering into Parliament of the next two MPs on the list in place of those two.
Wstąpienia w miejsca obu posłów następnych z list.
Nevertheless, Tusk's coalition is not going to back down from its lawlessness. Here no one is waiting for the next episode of the saga of Kamiński and Wąsik. The court has ruled the men are not deputies. They will not participate in the deliberations, period. No amount of blackmail by Mr. President will change that. The right of clemency in 2015 was applied by the President in connection with this. Thus, they should not be convicted. But even if they were, this sentence does not have the effect of depriving them of their parliamentary seats. This is exactly what the Supreme Court said in the control chamber on the 4th and 5th of January, confirming that the gentlemen are members of Parliament, that the right of clemency retains its force, and that they should carry out their parliamentary mandate. This is indicated by Krzysztof Szczucicki, about whom Tusk's Minister of Justice Adam Bodnar has written in the past. I am pleased that my colleague, Dr. Krzysztof Szczucicki, an outstanding criminalist, has joined Twitter. However, Tusk has opinions of lawyers for nothing. Instead of applying the law, he furiously attacks President Duda, accusing him of virtually everything. This is not the first time Tusk has destroyed a president who is not submissive to him. He previously took such actions against the late Lech Kaczynski. I don't want to use too strong words. Well, but Poland, a big country, a very difficult context, and a president of Poland who sends the case of deputies, who are not really deputies, to the court, which does not actually exist, in order to create confusion and such a constant sense of instability. This is something unacceptable. Just a few months ago, Tusk's people were saying that no one who is currently in power today is responsible for the chaos. Well, realistically, Tusk is in power, the chaos is there, and they say that the problem is in President Duda. The system that has formed, the majority system, is responsible. Never since 1989 has there been such a destruction of Polish statehood. And to quote Donald Tusk, and this is something absolutely unacceptable. Adrian Borecki, Telewizja Republika. Farmers from different European countries kept on protesting on Thursday aboard their tractors to press EU leaders to do more to help them with taxes, rising costs and cheap imports.
There's a lot at play here. So sustainability is an aspect, but the war in Ukraine is also a major factor influencing these protests. So with regard to the war in Ukraine, a lot of protests are responding to EU's both internal and external response to the war in Ukraine. The EU externally has really tried to mobilize exports from Ukraine in a way to provide aid to Ukraine, but this has caused a lot of uproar and stir and discontent with farmers within Europe.
In France, the European Union's biggest agricultural producer, after farmers have been protesting for weeks, complaining that they face unfair competition from rivals due to varying environmental standards among EU states, and setting up roadblocks on major roads over the last weeks, the government has dropped plans to gradually reduce subsidies on agricultural diesel and has promised more aid. There is an important point. It is the European level rule of 4% of fields kept fallow. I find that scandalous in a region like mine, where we are there to produce, to feed the French. We must be able to produce at 100% of our capacity. So let us work, let us produce, and we will do the rest to feed our fellow Frenchmen. Italian farmers joined the protest movement to press governments to ease environmental rules and shield them from rising costs and cheap imports. In recent days, they have blocked traffic with dozens of tractors near motorway access points near Milan, in Tuscany and elsewhere. We took to the streets to protest against Europe and the new laws it is making. Agriculture has already been on its knees for a long time, and we took to the streets because we have reached the end of our rope. We have a very low income. In Greece, farmers have parked tractors on the side of highways in central and northern Greece, symbolically blocking the arteries for only a short period as they stage protests. They are threatening to block highways for longer hours, risking transport chaos on the highway, which links the north of the country with the south, and cutting off the transport of goods. We are demanding a better tomorrow with low production costs, lower fuel prices, lower electricity prices, and a fair distribution of subsidies. Facing high production costs and losses from floods and droughts, they are demanding an increase in state subsidies, cheaper fuel and electricity, and swifter compensation for crops and livestock destroyed by weather-related events. In Portugal, tractors roared down a highway as farmers made their way towards Spain in an attempt to block the border. Despite an agreement reached between the country's biggest agricultural confederation, the CAP, and Portugal's caretaker government, several smaller associations, feeling misrepresented, announced plans for protests. Portugal's government announced on Wednesday an emergency aid package worth €500 million for farmers as it tries to avoid the kind of mass protests disrupting France and elsewhere across Europe. Farmers have been very badly treated in the recent years in Portugal. We don't have much information and the government response hasn't been perfect, mainly with the last cuts that were previously agreed with the farmers. Without any previous notice, they just cut. And I don't think this is the way to deal with people. Farmers are a very strong force in this country. The European Commission proposed on Wednesday measures to limit agricultural imports from Ukraine and greater flexibility towards rules on fallow land in a bid to quell the anger. The Commission said it would extend the suspension of import duties on Ukrainian exports for another year to June 2025. They were originally suspended in 2022 to help support Ukraine's economy following Russia's invasion. On Thursday, farmers threw eggs and stones in front of the European Parliament in Brussels, started fires near the building, and set off fireworks as they demanded EU leaders meeting nearby to help them with taxes and rising costs. The farmers' blockades on highways and protests that spread elsewhere in Europe are exposing a clash between the EU's drive to carbon dioxide emissions and its aim of becoming more self-sufficient in the production of food and other essentials following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Imports from Ukraine, on which the European Union has waived quotas and duties since Russia's February 2022 invasion, and renewed talks on concluding a trade deal with South American nations in the Mercosur bloc, have fanned farmers' discontent. At a European Union summit, all 27 leaders agreed to a €50 billion support package for Ukraine as part of the European Union budget. The money, to a large extent, is to be used for the country's day-to-day operations. I think this decision sends out a message for the Ukrainians, and it shows our determination to be absolutely mobilized to support their freedom, to support their future, as well as a message for our European population. This shows our unity and European leadership. This shows we are not intimidated by Russia, which is infringing international law. It's also a message to the United States and our global partners who support Ukraine and support the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine.
Today is indeed a very special day. The European Council reconfirmed Europe's unwavering commitment to stand with Ukraine. We all know that Ukraine is fighting for us, so we will support them with the necessary funding and provide them with the much-needed predictability they deserve. And I think these 50 billion euros for 4 years also send a very strong message to Putin, just ahead of the second anniversary of his brutal invasion.
I'm grateful for your decision on the financial instrument for us, for our people, for Ukraine. Ukraine facility with 50 billion euros for a 4-year period. This is a clear signal that Ukraine will withstand and that Europe will withstand. It is also really important that this decision was taken unanimously by all of you, all 27 member states, and it is yet another clear sign of your strong unity and support of Ukraine.
Following unforeseen technical challenges and bureaucratic hurdles, Europe's largest 3D printed building was completed with some delay and received its first tenant during a ceremony in southern Germany on Tuesday. The 55-metre long, 11-metre wide and 9-metre high building in Heidelberg is to house a computer centre, and according to its developer, it will likely not be the last such project for his company, despite some setbacks. Hans-Jörg Kraus of Kraus Group told Reuters Television the original plan was to print and put up a building in 140 hours, but in fact the actual construction took about a week longer. Before the building's completion and the key handing over ceremony, 10 months passed, said Kraus.
Ja, wir haben ursprünglich geplant gehabt, 140 Stunden zu drucken und am Bau dauert es also ein bisschen länger. Es waren dann 170 Stunden. Wenn Sie das zusammenrechnen, ist es vielleicht eine Woche. Aber wir stehen jetzt nach 10 Monaten erst da und machen die Schlüsselübergabe. Das liegt einfach daran, dass viele Nebenarbeiten gemacht werden mussten. Wir haben ja konventionell die Bodenplatte gemacht und das Dach gemacht. Aber auch Herausforderungen durch die Innovation. Womit vorher keiner rechnen konnte, aber uns klar war, solche Dinge wird es geben. So haben wir zum Beispiel durch die Wellenform des Gebäudes gemerkt, dass die Anschlüsse am Dach was ganz Neues sind. Und das haben wir lösen müssen. Das hat Wochen gedauert. Es ist schon fast ein Gag, wenn man sich überlegt, an dem Gebäude gibt es 2 Türen, aber wir haben Wochen gebraucht, bis wir es gelöst haben, weil alle Standardtüren, die man so kriegt, die wir vorzeitig natürlich nicht bestellt haben, sind auf nur einen ganz speziellen Beton zugelassen.
Kraus's next 3D project is 3 times the size of the Heidelberg Computer Centre, but he said that he could not yet reveal details as the public administration was involved.